Hello, you guys. I'm Carlos Ramirez. We are here again with another episode of Circuit Update. I'm here today with Derrek Belase, our Director of Connectional Ministries, and we're going to talk about the 5 dreams, our strategic approach on your conference. And we are delighted that you're here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And we're just going to go right into it. So why did we discern these 5 dreams?
The 5 dreams have been the work of actually most of our ministry teams in our annual conference. Mm-hmm. Our annual conference is divided into ministry teams that relate to local churches, to ethnic local church concerns, of course to pension and health benefits, to local churches, to new faith communities. And those are made up of people from all around the annual conference, lay and clergy people who come together and they do the work of the annual conference, just like we do in local churches, mm-hmm. where we have different committees that do work to think about the vision of the annual conference in these particular areas. How will we make disciples and transform the world in these areas, new faith communities and revitalized churches and healthy clergy and local churches and board of laity and all these kinds of things. And so as the director of Connectional Ministries, I was just listening into these various committee meetings, some that I'm a part of as a staff person, but also just in talking to staff who attend those, to the chair people, to reading the reports, and to beginning to discern what are the major initiatives, what are the major strategies that the annual conference could begin to think about. But I also was just hearing from experts in the fields around strategic planning to say, it's just nearly impossible after COVID to sit down and say, what's a 5-year strategic plan or what's a 10-year strategic plan? And so I thought, what we're trying to do as an annual conference is dream about making disciples and transforming the world. Not aspirations, not hopes, but actual dreams that allow us to think at the annual conference, how can we impact at the local church? And how can what the local church is already doing impact the work of the annual conference? So that it's not a top-down or a bottom-up strategy. It really is a connectional work that we're about as United Methodist.
Awesome. So I have heard you many times talking about the ecology of the work in your conference, and you compare it to a pipeline, right? And why have you chosen the imagery of ecology over a pipeline or any other imagery for that matter?
Well, in the 5 dreams, revitalized congregations and lighthouse churches, actually dream number 2. Dream number 1, new faith communities for new people. Dream number 3, communities impacting poverty, healthy churches leading healthy congregations led by healthy clergy, and emerging leaders for a new conference. All of those come out of the seeds that we plant, right? They come out of the cultivation that we do, the nurturing that we do. And for so long we've used the pipeline imagery to sort of imagine how we either get churches into a pipeline, or we get clergy into a pipeline, or we get lay people into a pipeline to become clergy, as though there's only one way. If you think about a pipe, there's only one way through it. You enter it one way, you come out of it another. It carries you to a certain location. But an ecology is much more about how things happen. How do we plant the seeds? How do we nurture them? How do we water them? How does the work that we do together impact the various dreams? In a pipeline, new faith communities might be thinking about that, but they may not be thinking about emerging leaders for an emerging conference. Revitalized churches can become such a focus that they don't think about the fact that a revitalized church impacts its community related to issues around poverty. And ecology allows all these things to sit side by side, to be planted and nurtured together, to be thought about together. And ecology is much more holistic. It allows lots of people to be involved in it, and it allows people to move in various places. For a long time, we've had an office of mission, and that mission office has been focused on creating sometimes international partnerships and sometimes community partnerships, but we were often missing the mission field that was right outside of our doors. And I was working with a church one time that had some conflict around running their food pantry, and I remember asking them, well, do you sit down and pray before you get started, and do you have a time to reflect on what happened afterwards like a mission team does? And they said, no, we're just so busy trying to get open and get the work done that we don't do that. And I went and worked with them and asked them to think about themselves as a mission team every time they opened the food pantry. Then they started doing the things a mission team does as though they were going overseas, and all of a sudden the conflict they had, it stopped because they were doing things so much differently. That's what happens in ecology, right? You begin to think that this is actually connected to this, and you can see them. If it's in a pipeline, then it's very isolated. And another image that we sometimes use is a silo. And so a pipeline can lead to that, right? This is the silo about new faith communities, and this is the one about revitalized churches. This is about impacting poverty, when we need all of them working together to do that. I think they actually build like this. If we don't have new churches, if we never start any new churches, we're not going to be able to revitalize the churches that we have. Oftentimes, revitalization comes from lessons we learn from starting new churches. If we don't have any revitalized churches, we can't impact our communities around the issue of poverty, because we just become a social service agency, right? If we're not impacting our communities, then we're not creating healthy congregations. And if we're not creating healthy congregations led by healthy clergy, we can't find any new emerging leaders for a new conference. So in many ways, the 5 dreams, they're all connected. And we actually have them listed in those ways, not because they're in an order of importance. In fact, this year, the annual conference is really focused on communities impacting poverty. We had a day of learning around that at our annual conference. We're going to be asking local churches in their yearly profile to tell us what they're doing. So it's not that they're ranked in order of importance. They're ranked in order of how they're connected and how one builds on the other.
So, in your, in some few words, for our good people of Oklahoma, if they're saying, okay, you name all the dreams, what would be in a few words the essence of each dream? What would be for you like the essence of each one?
New churches for new people is just that. We are looking to start new churches in new places because new churches reach new people. We have 127 places, at least at a minimum, where we lost local churches through the disaffiliation process. But that doesn't mean those are the only communities.
Right.
We have lots of places where we have people moving, where we have pockets of people that we haven't yet reached. Revitalized congregations and lighthouse churches is just that. It's the dream that all of our churches can take a deep, hard look at themselves and say, what's the next faithful step we could take to revitalize, to reach new people, to think about our mission field in a new way. Communities impacting poverty, again, it's just that. How do our faith communities look around them in their communities where there are pockets of poverty, it doesn't matter what community you live in, and say, what can we do? What can we do to make a difference for the people who are hungry, truly, literally hungry in this community, before we're going to be able to invite them to church to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ? I think the one that's been most interesting to watch, and the feedback is actually healthy clergy leading healthy churches. What we have found is that churches are really able to tell us what healthy clergy look like. But oftentimes churches haven't been able to say, what does it look like when we're healthy? What we're really saying here is it's a partnership. There's a phrase, hurt people, and heal people. It's the same here. If the church and the clergy aren't both healthy, if one of them is experiencing some sort of decline or some sort of illness as a part of their work, then the other one isn't. And so we really are looking at what's the partnership here between our clergy and laity, and asking laity to begin to think, what do I have to do to help my church become healthy? So that one is really about the partnership between existing clergy and churches, and that's why it builds on the first two. The fifth one, emerging leaders for a new conference, is not about recruiting new clergy. It's about finding leaders who want to lead in a new way as United Methodism begins to take hold in Oklahoma in a new way again. And so it's about how we train laity and clergy to work together. Yes, it's about how we find new clergy to serve our churches. It's also about how we find lay people to take new roles in their churches. But also sometimes it's about laity who say, I can take a next step even in my local congregation. Just at lunch today, I was talking to a young person who works at OCU, and we were talking about a young lady who went to OCU, moved back to her hometown, went to work at the bank. The church is kind of small, found themselves, we didn't have a pastor to send. They looked around and said, we've got somebody. We don't need you to send us somebody. We've got somebody that we've nurtured. Now she's in course of study. Now she's a local pastor. They nurtured her. They found her. They identified her. That's what we're talking about oftentimes when we're talking about emerging leaders for an emerging conference. What does it look like to do indigenous leadership? We actually said it in 2008. It was one of the goals of the strategic plan in 2008 when we even started this conversation around leadership development. We're just trying to take it to the next level.
Awesome. So let's say that, God blesses all the work that has been done for the conference and our local congregations, and everything is comes to a happy ending, if you will, the so-called Disney ending, right? The perfect ending. So how would that look like? What is your realized vision or realized reality once all the dreams are fully accomplished, fully realized?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with what the kingdom looks like, the way that we talk about the Lord's Prayer, right? That God's kingdom comes on earth as it is in heaven. I don't know that I'm going to get to see that. I've been a part of the Oklahoma Annual Conference since I was born. I was born and raised in the United Methodist Church here in our annual conference. I served as a lay leader and now as a member of the clergy. And I've certainly seen a lot of wonderful things happen in the United Methodist Church in Oklahoma through our churches and our communities. I've also seen a lot of churches close in our conference, and a lot of churches that no longer are able to reach their mission field in the way they once were. Sometimes those buildings become other things, and they become really great ministry sites for other communities. I think I say all that because I'm reminded of the story that Lovett Weems used to use when he was working with churches around revitalization matters, and he would ask this question: will the community recognize when your church isn't present any longer? Or will your church be able to close down and people will say, well, we're not really sure how anything changed in our community, even though that church wasn't there? What I think happens when these 5 dreams become reality is that if one of our churches was to close, then the community does say, this won't happen any longer if the United Methodist Church isn't there. This food pantry will close. This after-school program won't be there to reach people. This place won't be a center for ministry. And it becomes a thing whereby the community says, gosh, without you, we're not who we are. Frequently when I go to local communities, and I know you've worked in revitalization, this annual conference, for a long time as well, we'll hear things like this. First it was our hospital, then our school. Sometimes it was an industry in between. And when they left, everything changed. But what happens when we're a part of that list? Right? When people say, oh, and if the United Methodist Church left, this community would really feel its impact. My home church closed in 2023. It was painful to see the place that had nurtured me, 4 generations of my family before me, come to a place where they had to close. And my role at the annual conference is a part of that. So I was a part of the closure. I've been a part of trying to sell the building. But when I went to the closing worship service, which I was honored to be preaching at, the people who were there, including my 8th grade English teacher, Mrs. Harrison, who was always very honest with me, and that hasn't changed, she said, notice, Derrek, that the people who are most upset about this, those of you who are crying the biggest tears today, are the people who aren't here anymore. And I really wrestled with that. What did that mean? Why was she saying that? Well, what I realized is they had created a significant food pantry in that community. The church, it was 2 stories. It was hard for people to get in and out of. They were actually going to go to church 7 miles down the road in a church that was all on one level, that was much newer. But they were leaving the food pantry in the town where the church was closing. What she was saying to me is, listen, the ministry, the hands and feet ministry that we do on behalf of Jesus Christ is still here in this town. And in fact, it's bigger than it was because they now had their own building. They were doing their own ministry. And now 2 communities were a part of this. 2 school systems were having kids come work in this food pantry. 2 people were a part of this great thing. 2 churches. Yeah, they were merging. They were going to go to church 7 miles down the road. They saw their ministry as expanding, while the person with the history of the church saw it as diminishing. That's not what they saw at all. They saw as an opportunity to leave part of the ministry in the community where they couldn't go to church anymore, and impact another community in a major way. We see those kinds of seeds being planted all around in Elk City, where we have the hub, where Scott Rogers and Caleb Burge and Terry Jordan and all these ministry, all these people have come together to say, we can serve 6 churches in this area. Now, they're going to go all the way up into a desolate area where we have only one United Methodist Church after disaffiliation, and they're going to serve them too, right? A powerful opportunity that we have, right? That's not a pipeline, that's an ecology, that's a dream, that's the way all these things connect. I think those are the kinds of stories that I think tell me that the vision can be realized. We have to see it in a new way, we have to think about it in new ways, we have to see ministry with new possibilities. But I think it's powerful. We just had our annual conference, the world, Forever Our Parish was our theme. This is the kind of forever thing that I think of when I think about the world as our parish, not our parish as our world, as Bishop Nunn said, but truly seeing how we impact the world.
Yeah, thank you. It's powerful. So, I mean, that would just answer this last question before our last question. That it is that, what would you say to the people of Oklahoma? And that is that the Forever A Parish. So that's what it is.
Yeah, I think that the message that I think is just resonating so powerfully with me right now is that the possibilities that are in front of us are more vast, are more endless. They're more powerful than they've been because the church has allowed itself to give people the opportunity to follow their conscience, to do the things they want to do. I don't think we have to have these kind of fights over where we're at on these particular issues. We've made some decisions. Folks have made their own decisions, and now we can go forward. Churches should look around themselves and say, how can we make the biggest difference where we're at? We don't have to go overseas. We don't have to create. We don't have to connect with a mission team somewhere else. We don't have to envision that. We stand at the crossroads. I think the most powerful image in the Bible, it's got to be Abram and Sarai, who become Abraham and Sarah in Genesis 12, standing at the crossroads, recognizing that they, childless as they were about to be people that were going to bless the whole world. But they had to move. They had to move from that place where they were. They had to move from the crossroads at Haran and go. And that's the call, right? Michael Beck, I think, is talking about the great omission right now is not to make disciples, it's the go.
Yeah.
Right? Go make disciples. Go. I mean, we have to do that, but we don't have to go very far. We go right outside our doors. We find our mission field.
Thank you. So I've been asking our other guests to, as a kind of a closing, what you are doing to, it could be for kind of related to ministry, but outside of ministry, something that just recharges you, something that just connects you back to God. I was talking to Maddie the other day, and I said, what do you do for, when the business of the church, gets to be overwhelming, and they need to be more about the heart of the church back again, So what do you do? What are you working on, or what do you do for those moments?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a good question. That may be hard to for me to answer. Mostly what I think I do is we have an 8-year-old, and she sees the world very differently than we do, and so oftentimes I'm just intrigued by the things that she is interested in doing. She wants to go to the park, and all of a sudden we go to the park, and I think we're there to play, and the next thing I know, she's met a new friend, and now all of a sudden our world has expanded to new people. But that happens all the time, right? So I sit down and I try to sort of see the world through her eyes. What does she see? What makes her excited? And how can I go along and sort of regain some of that? I don't think it's as much of a childlike innocence as I think it's a childlike curiosity. Like, why this? Why does it have to be like this? And oftentimes the question is not so much that she's asking is not so much unanswerable I'm the only one who thinks it's not answerable. She only asks the question because she thinks there's an answer, right? She has a curiosity. And so I think for me, I spent a lot of my time in the church, and we spent a lot of our family time going to church and participating in church. But I just find that when I can sort of look at the world through her eyes, be as curious as she is about the things that are happening, ask the why questions that she does, and to see the whole world as a place that wants to be in your friend and in relationship with you. I would love to imagine going to a place and being able to make a friend as quickly as she can, right? And to be able to engage in a conversation as easily as she can. So I think that's what it does. That's what it is for me. The recharge comes from this, sort of childlike curiosity. We just happen to have a person that allows us to do that, but I suspect that all of us can remember that. And so for me, I think that's what it is.
Hello you guys, I'm Carlos and I'm here today with Maddie Day. I'm so excited that she accepted for us to have this conversation with her. You're going to hear all about her ministry and how exciting it is. I get the privilege to have kind of a preview interview with her. We just get to shoot the breeze a little and get to know each other better. But anyway, you get to see and hear, more importantly, what she's been up to for the last few months and what she's going to be doing later on. So, and what is important for her as she responds God's calling as a lay person in the United Methodist Church. So without further ado, thank you, Maddie, for being here today. And I want to just start with one first question. Who are you? Just tell the good people of Oklahoma, who are you and where do you serve and for how long you've been serving?
Yes, so my name is Maddy Day. I am the Director of Youth Ministry at New Hope United Methodist Church, and I have been there for about 4 years now. But I've been in the director position for, I think this is going on my 3rd year.
Fun. Yay. And okay, so tell us, about your call to ministry. Tell us what, how do you felt about, God is calling you to do youth ministry, which, it is, I don't know if it's everybody like, yeah, I want to be with, the 8th graders and the 12th graders and all those kinds of things. So.
Well, as I was in middle school, as a 6th grader or 7th grader, I had those moments where I was like, oh, I'm just going to be a youth director. Don't know where that came from. It just kind of popped out of my mouth. But as I've gotten older, things change. And I was like, oh, I want to be a history teacher, or I want to do math, something like that. But every so often I would have those moments where I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll be a youth director, But it wasn't until my junior year of high school that I was at camp and my small group leader was like, hey, I want to know what each of you are called to do by God. And I was like, I don't know what I'm called to do.
That is intense. That is intense.
Yes, it was very intense. But I went to my youth director because I seriously thought about it, and I was talking to my youth director and I was like, I really don't know what God is calling me to do. And so she encouraged me to pray every time that we have communion. And so we had communion in the morning and then also at worship in the evening. And so every time we had communion, we would sit down together and we would go, okay, God, what are you calling Maddie to do? Please show us in ways that we can recognize and see. And as the week went on, I just kept thinking, wow, I wish I could do this. I want to do that. And it was kind of like an aha moment by the end of the week, oh yeah, that is a calling.
Here's what you've been called to do.
Yes. And so as I've gotten older and post high school, I've had reaffirmations of my calling that are just you are doing what you're called to do. And the moments that I see my youth just being God and showing God to others in the way that they treat them. And recently I had one of my youth do a devotion at a lock-in that we held. And the words and the things that she was saying were like things that I was teaching her. And it was like a full circle moment of like, God is working through you, and you are called to what you're doing. So
very fulfilling, I bet it was.
yes, very much so.
Yes, great. All right, so tell us about how you, because I think you and I have a conversation probably in one of the camps or sometime, and you were telling me about, that you were doing a youth ministry and youth hope and everything, and I ask, probably like any other pastor or maybe many people have asked you, so when are you going to be a pastor? And you consciously say, well, this is it. This is what I want to do, I'm doing ministry, and ordained ministry is not my calling. And you made me think a lot of things, and probably it was before too. I was talking about reformations or affirmations of things that you've been thinking about. That sometimes when we see a leadership, leadership equals being a pastor, particularly with young people, right? And we want them to go through the process, and so we want them to be a leader as a pastor. And you said, no, this is what I'm called to be doing, and the affirmations that you've been mentioned. So how you consciously have decided to be a lay leader answering God's calling?
Yeah, so I have had a lot of people who ask me like, oh, when are you going to seminary? Are you going to do ordained ministry? And a lot of the time I'll be like, no, that's not for me. And I'll kind of mention like, I feel like I am where God is calling me to be. And I don't shut down the conversation or the possibility of going into possibly ordained ministry, because who knows where God will call me in the future.
Right.
But for now, I feel like God is calling me to youth ministry. I went to conference, and it was the first time that I got to experience an ordination service. And as they were kind of like going through and asking the questions, I was just sitting there going, like, that's so amazing what they're doing, but it couldn't be me. Like, I can't do that. But I was also surrounded by the youth, because I was helping and running the youth delegation part of it. And it was kind of like a feeling and a heart moment of, I'm called to be here and to help guide the youth who do want to go to ordination or who do want to be laity. Of like, the way that I see it is that I help youth to build a foundation or keep building on their foundation, and so that when they graduate high school, that when they go out into the world, they will know what they believe, and that they, when they're encountered with things, they can fall back onto like their strong faith.
So following with that, I would like to ask you this question. When you're saying I would like to have the foundation strong as they go into the world. So as they go into the world, what is the right thing that you would like for them to, if anything, they remember, because of those Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings with you, and other times they interact with you, and all the mission trips and fun trips and whatever it is that you're doing. What is the thing that you would like for them to remember, or you want to teach them, to convey to them, to tell them about, pass on to what you have, make the impact you want to give to them about God and about their faith and about, what it is that they want to take. Basically, what do you want for them to take away as they go to the world?
So with all of my teaching, I think that there are two things that I really kind of focus on a lot, and things that I say to my youth a lot, and one of them is love and the other is grace. And so especially as teenagers, they are prone to make mistakes, because that's just how being a teenager is.
Yes. And
so something that we say a lot is that there's nothing you can do, nothing you can say that will make God stop loving you. And so we just emphasize that God's grace is always there, and that even if you turn your back on God, God does not turn God's back on you, and that God is always reaching out to you.
Yes.
And so a lot of our youth do have that in their hearts, and I see it in the conversations that they have, and when they are speaking in front of others, I see it in the things that they say. And then the love part is that they are called to love other people. Working with teenagers is hilarious, and they love to tease and poke fun at each other.
Yes.
But sometimes that teasing can go too far to where it's hurtful.
Yeah.
And so something that I do with my youth, that my youth director did with me, is that when they do cross that boundary and that line, we have them say compliments to each other of like, oh, say 3 compliments about this person. And it's not like, oh, I like your shoes or I like your shirt. But we have them say compliments about who that person is. Because we really think that like God is love, and as everybody is made in the image of God and is a beloved child of God, we are called to treat others as such.
Yes.
And so when we have them do that, we are having them kind of see that godliness and that image of God within that person.
Yeah.
So it's a recognition of that.
So you answer you calling as a layperson, as you said, you're not shutting the door about possibly other type of leadership, particularly ministry, but for right now, laity. So what is your invitation to the laity of the Oklahoma Annual Conference who are seeking to serve, and or maybe are like, oh, what should I do, or I'm in the fence and I want to serve, or they are already serving? You know, what will be your words of encouragement, or what is your word for them?
Yeah. So something that I always encourage my youth to do is find something that they're passionate about, and then see how they can involve that within the ministry of church, because not everybody is called to be a pastor, and that there is work for laity and to be the hands and feet of God. And so we talk about like, oh, if you're good at math and you love like to do finance stuff, like there are people needed on the finance committee and the trustees committee and all of these different things in the life of the church, that it's not just preaching on a Sunday morning or teaching a Bible study. And so something that I encourage laity to do is to go to their leaders within their church and say, hey, how can I help, or what is there something that I can do? Or I always love when members of my church come up and they're like, hey, if you ever need an adult to just hang out with the youth on a Sunday night, to be like safe sanctuary, but also to interact with the kids, that is always like a blessing to know that one, we have their support, but also they want to be involved. So just like offering your service of like, hey, I want to help, and how can I help? Or I have this gift of this thing, how can you use me?
It's a great word.
Yes, it helps me think as a leader, like, oh, right, I remember we're doing this thing and this person said that they were good at that. Let me involve them because I am not good at that.
Right, yes, particularly finance and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
It is needed. Believe me, it is needed. So before we wrap it up, I guess I said thank you, but just also for the good people of Oklahoma, we want to make it, that it is, yes, we talk about all the God's business and everything, but I think also God's business, it is for us to care for ourselves, fill our cup. So what did Maddy Day does on a, for just to kind of refill the cup, kind of unplug a little bit from the business of the church and get into the, the heart of the church, if you will. So what do you do for recharging your energy, recharging your soul?
Yes. So what I do is I do a lot of just being in nature, nature is where I connect with God. And so my kids all know that I love to go out in hammock. And so I have a hammock stand that I have in my backyard, or I also have rocking chairs out there. And my backyard is kind of up to a forested area. And so just being able to sit and listen and be in God's presence is very soul-fulfilling.
Yeah.
But also just taking a moment to breathe, I think is also a good one. Because I think that sometimes when you are in the administrative side of ministry, that it can get a little stressful and you can get really tense.
Right.
And that sometimes you just need to take a step back and breathe and kind of let go of that control that you have and say, okay, God, work in this space, and I'm letting go of what I can't control to allow you to be in this space. And something that I mention to my youth all the time is that when God breathed the breath of breathed the breath of life into humanity, that every single breath we take, we breathe in God's Spirit. And so just taking a moment to step back and to just breathe is a moment with God.
Well, thank you again. Thank you again for taking the time, for being here with us. And see you soon.